So a quick demo of incorporating the web API, right? So as we had in our discussion just now, we're going to need some DTO objects. I'm going to right-click Models. Now you could put these in a separate folder. I tend to put my DTOs right in the same class with my entity models, largely because eventually often I share metadata between them. But anyway, here we are. So there's my Dr. DTO. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw my properties in here. Now, again, I'm keeping this a simple demo, so we're not going to worry about the many to doctor specialties. We're just going to focus on the doctor. I am going to include the patients as well, because I want to demonstrate including information about the patients. But truth is, I already went ahead and created, to save a bit of time, my patient DTO, but it's not complete. It doesn't have every property of my normal patient. It's just enough to show everything that's relevant to our demonstration, right? But you do notice here that inside Dr. DTO, we have a I collection, yes, called patients, but the data type is our patient DTO as well, right? Okay, before we leave this as well, let me point out, look at this. I'm adding in data annotations. Yes, that way we can give this good feedback if they leave the last name out, right? Then we can give feedback. You cannot leave the last name blank, et cetera, right? Setting our string lengths and all the error messages and so on and so forth. One thing you notice is missing, display name. Well, we don't have any views. We're not displaying anything. So there was really no need to have that annotation in place. But as I said, if I had more time, I'd show you doing a metadata class and so on. But for now, I'll just have the properties in here and away we go. All right, so that's good. So we have our doctor and patient DTOs. So let's go on to actually getting ready to add our separate controller. For this, I'm going to have to come into program, because here are things like where we get ready with our builder to prepare the app, add controllers with views. Oh, that sounds to me a lot like MVC views, right? Because we have controllers along with them and so on, okay? But I'm going to add something else here. This I may not necessarily actually get around to using, but endpoints is one of the ways that we can set up our web API controllers. But even more importantly, let me get this bit of code in place. Add controllers, okay? That's a more general controller. But I'm using that as an opportunity to specify something about my JSON serialization, right? Seems to me that when I'm serializing the data, if a property has the default, right? Default value, maybe that's null, right? Or maybe it's an empty string, whatever. If it has the default value, why bother serializing it and including it, right? Just bulks up the amount of data you have to send back and forth. So I like to set this option here when I do my serialization, because after all, on the client side, what you're going to have there is a class, right, that can reconstruct everything. So it will have the same default value. So we don't even need to mention it. It's going to be the default for that class as well. Okay, that's all we really have to do. So let me just click Save. We'll come back and do more work later on. But for now, we just come up to Controllers. I'm going to add a new controller. However, no, don't just click, right? This is what we've been doing most of the time. If we haven't done it yet, we'll soon be doing just an empty MVC controller. But our focus is over here. Look at API, right? Now, there are API controllers we can set up with endpoints, but no, this is the one we're going to choose. API controller with actions using Entity Framework. This is the one. I'm choosing it for one reason, because it's going to look the most familiar. It's very much like what we're used to seeing in our MVC controller. So I'll click Add, get our dialog box up here. I have to specify the model. The model class will, as we discussed, be our doctor. Context is the same, right? Now, let me talk a bit about the name here. So far, with all of our MVC controllers, we've been taking time to remove whatever characters I use to pluralize the name, right? That's the default way that it's scaffolded. So in our MVC one, I changed it to doctor, right? And we did all the other singular names. And the main purpose for that, just cast your mind back, is with our custom controllers, Cognizant and so on, it can strip out the first part of the name of the controller and use that to identify the name of the entity, right? So that's worked very well for us. Now, I could call this like Doctor API or anything else I wanted. It has to be different. I can't use Doctor Controller because I can't have two with the same name. But I'm going to just leave it as doctors, okay? I know that that means that it's going to be a web API controller, but you could use a different naming convention, whatever you prefer. So this should only take a moment or two to get up and going, right? And there we go. Okay. Now, what do we notice is different? Well, probably you notice this, first of all, right off the top, route, API/controller. Now, that's the default. You can change that if you want to, right? But this is how the URI, remember, it's all based on the URI, will determine or help us determine what controller to route it to. API/ in the name of the controller, that's going to bring it here. So if this is the doctor's controller, so API/doctors will automatically be routed here. Remember, this is the same as MVC. The names we give to these different actions mean nothing in terms of the user interface, right? Or in our case, the URI, okay? It's all about the route. So if it's sent to our root and then API/the controller, it will come here. If it's a GET request, then it gets routed to this particular action, right? If it's a GET request with an ID parameter passed as well, oh, then it will route it to this one where we get a single doctor identified by the primary key, right? So much of the logic is similar, right, to our MVC, but we're even more dependent in this way, or more focused on the URI and how that is put together, because that decides the routing inside of our controller itself. So I can actually run this right now. But before I do, let me throw in a variation here of this GET, right? Okay. So here, the only thing now of course I had to give it a different name, so I just put INC at the end of the name here. But it's an HTTP GET, so if it's a GET request, but then has INC/INC, that's a way that in the URI I can indicate that I want to include the patients and the doctor. Okay, fair enough. Let's just try running this and see some of the data we can get up on the screen. All right, so might as well maximize it. I mean, I can still go to the MVC controller, no problem, right? But if I come in here and go API, doctor, with an S, doctors, there it is. There's my data, serializing JSON. I check that off, see it arranged for me. Uh-oh, look at these secret properties. Wow, that's one reason why I really need to use my DTOs. At this point, I'm just using the actual entity classes themselves, the doctor class, right? Okay, now what if I also go /INC and include the patients as well? Boo, 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 boo. There we go. Look at that. Object cycle was detected, okay? The object depth is larger than the maximum out of 32. I guess there we are on, okay, 32. That's the number of times. After chasing its tail around and around 32 times, it says, nope, no more. Okay, we aren't going to follow this cycle anymore, right? Okay, that's another. So we've seen two basic problems, right? The secret data is coming through, and we have object cycles. So definitely we have to switch things around, so we're using a DTO. So let me just change this to Dr. DTO, right? So we're going to return Dr. DTO objects, okay? And it'll be the same down here in a moment too, but we'll get to that in a second. So obviously, well, I've got to make some changes here. I might as well just take that out for the moment. I'm going to get my link query basically in place to go and get the actual data itself. Now, of course, it's not happy here because we're not returning anything yet, so don't worry about that red underline up here. That will go away, right? So I'm going to get my Dr. DTOs. I'll go to doctors, but I don't just take them directly. Once I have them, I select basically into a new Dr. DTO, right, for each one. So what goes inside these curly braces here are all the assignment statements, right, that I'm going to take the first name, copy it over to the DTO's first name, et cetera, et cetera. Now, it's not a lot of code in this case because there's only 4 properties to worry about. So I could definitely just write it myself very, very quickly. But I did say I would demonstrate our mapping generator, right? So let's take a moment here. Let me go and install it. So if I come down to the NuGet Package Manager, go to the console here, right? What I really want then is my install package command. Now, as I said, there are some choices that we can make here in terms of the install package.